Well, it's been a little bit since we talked insect and wheat pressure, but today we're joined by OSU entomology professor, Dr. Kris Giles. And Kris, you were kind of new to Sunup, but you actually took part in Sunup, 20 years ago. You used to do interviews with us.
Yeah, in studio interviews, talking to Rob and talking about insects in wheat, insects and other cropping systems. And so we really started the program about 25 years ago. And now I think it's matured to a state where we can make really good recommendations.
And you're a professor as well.
Professor in entomology, plant pathology, together, worked with many of the different faculty on campus, across campus, working mainly in wheat systems though.
It's been, like I mentioned just before, it's been a little bit since we've talked insect and wheat pressure. So kind of looking back in the fall, what was the situation there?
Well, there was a little bit of an issue with fall armyworm, and I think people that had those issues addressed those early on and maintained their stands. It was a concern because of lack of water, but I think that those folks that needed to manage them did deal with them pretty effectively. Now, we haven't had much rain during the winter, and so the crop is kind of a little bit behind, a little bit shorter, and so those folks that did manage those fall insect pressure issues, I think are doing okay, as long as we get some water.
Yeah, as you mentioned, drought, and if you're kind of cross that I-44 corridor, it's really, really dry. So how does that impact, insect pressure in general?
Well, in general, insects do really well when it's dry. So the two main culprits that we would worry about would be aphids, like green bugs and bird chariot aphids, and then brown wheat mite. And so those both are going to do really well during conditions of low moisture, and they both can be concerning. One of the issues we've had recently is English grain aphid popping up, and so we're going to have to keep an eye on that. But right now, numbers are looking pretty low for aphids around the state, and we haven't seen much brown wheat mite damage. So things are looking okay, but we're going to have to monitor things as the drought continues.
Well, and it's definitely important to monitor because we were kind of in the same situation last year, and brown wheat mite kind of sprung up almost out of nowhere. So how do you scout for that issue?
It's a real issue, and so they're too small to see for most of us. And so what we're looking for is characteristic wheat damage by these mites. And so it's kind of almost looks like a barley yellow dwarf kind of damage. It's indistinguishable from a lot of the diseases, but more consistent throughout the field. And so those do rise up in the spring and the late spring, and with no moisture, they're going to be a real problem. And they do cause significant yield loss. But there are products that can be used to treat them if you see damage in your wheat.
So how quickly do you need to apply those insecticides to really take effect?
Relatively quickly, but the good thing is that we've got a lot of people out in the state taking a look, and so we're noticing what's happening. And if we see it start to pop up in a few areas, we can tell people to keep a lookout for it, and then they can treat it effectively. But we've actually done several years worth of research, specifically Tom Royer, who's the extension entomologist, and treating in a timely fashion really preserves wheat yields.
So it's relatively quiet right now, but in Oklahoma, a lot of things can change quickly. We could just hopefully get a lot of rain, but that could really, change the situation.
Yeah, rain does a pretty good job on knocking aphid populations down. And the aphids are just starting. We're out taking a look here, and we're finding them throughout the state. But more normally, those aphids are controlled by natural enemies, little parasitic wasps. But we're going to have to keep track this year because the conditions are just a little bit drier than usual, and aphids can really get going. So that's one thing that we need to look out for. Other than that, I think just paying attention to any kind of damage that looks unusual for brown wheat mite. That's it.
All right, thanks, Kris. If you'd like some more information on how to manage brown wheat mite, go to our website, sunup.okstate.edu.